Thank you for joining me on this training session on the Purina obesity management diets. My name is Laura Hughes and I'm the Veterinary Nurse Development Manager at Purina. So in today's session, we will cover an overview of obesity, the objectives of dietary management, and the canine and feline ranges and weight management clinics. So let's just start with reminding ourselves how big this issue is. So it is the most common form of malnutrition, and I find this sentence really interesting. Unfortunately, when we think of an animal that's malnourished, we often think of one that is underweight, but technically it means having a diet that doesn't contain the right amount of nutrients. Obesity is a growing trend, with about 67% of dogs within the UK being classed as overweight or obese, but even more of a worry is that this is impacting about 37% of growing dogs. The number of cats is slightly smaller at about 44%, but because this is a growing trend, it is something that we need to be very mindful of and be thinking about at every visit to the practice. So now we look at body condition score. So we use the validated 1 to 9 point scale, and this is the most widely accepted and practical method of assessing excess body fat, and it's called body condition scoring. It was created in Purina by 1993, and it assesses visual and palpable characteristics that correlate between subcutaneous fat, abdominal fat, superficial musculature, for example, the rib cage, the dorsal spinal processes, and the waist. And this validated 9-point scoring system for cats and dogs is widely accepted. Now, what's interesting is for each point on the 9-point system, it represents 10 to 15% excess body weight. So if obesity is defined as weighing 25% more than the ideal, this is the equivalent of a 7 or more on the 9-point scale. So the ideal for a dog is to be between a 4 and a 5, and for a cat is to be a 5. And each increment, either up or down, would correlate to about a 10 to 15% increase or decrease in body weight. So this is the time to think about, is everybody in your practice happy doing body condition scores? And I'm talking about from the reception team through to the nurses, through to the vets. And actually, is there an activity that you could do to all practice on maybe one of the staff pets or one of the inpatients that's very friendly, and see whether you're all getting the same score as well? Also looking at making sure that you're placing these body condition score charts in all of the areas around the practice. So making sure that you've got them in reception, making sure that you've got them near the weighing scales, in the consulting rooms, and kind of subliminally giving that message to the owner of what that ideal body condition score is, just to try and help them be aware of it as well. So how do we assess body condition score? So when we look and feel a dog, we should be able to see the ribs with minimal fat covering. If we were to view the dog from above, the waist should go in slightly. We're not looking for an hourglass, and we're also not looking for a square table. And when we look at them from the side, the abdomen should have a slight tuck. It's exactly the same process for our feline friends, but I've obviously added the feline pictures here just so that you can view that. So again, we're looking at being able to see and feel the ribs without too much fat covering. We want to be able to see a slight waist if we look at them from above. Again, not that hourglass or not that square table. And we should have a slight tummy tuck when we look at them from the side on. So the question here is, how good are owners at assessing body condition score? Well, the quick answer is they're not very good at looking at body condition score and assessing what their animals sit at. So there have been several studies by Purina looking at this. The first one involved 3,339 owners, and 33% of those owners identified that their dog was an ideal body condition score when actually they were classed as overweight or obese. And only 51% of these owners were able to correctly identify an ideal body condition score. Now, we did another smaller study that was with 201 owners, and almost 70% of those owners classed the animal as an ideal body condition score, but their vet or vet nurse said that they were overweight. So that shows a significant disparity between the two opinions. So, why does weight matter? So, in a landmark Purina study, we looked at 48 paired Labrador retrievers and they were tracked throughout their life. So, one of each pair was fed 25% fewer calories, and these dogs had a body condition score of 4.6 compared to the dogs that were in the control fed group that had a body condition score of 6.7. And that was following the feeding guidelines at the time. So this study revealed many, many different factors, but what it revealed was that maintaining an ideal body weight from puppy throughout their life increased their lifespan by nearly 2 years. So it was 1.8 years they lived longer in the lean fed group. And actually, we also saw a significant delay and onset of chronic diseases associated with aging, like osteoarthritis. By the age of 5, 40% of the dogs in the control group had arthritis, while the dogs in the ideal group, only about 10% of them had arthritis. What we also saw was that the presence of and the severity of that arthritis was greatly reduced in those dogs that were the ideal body condition score. We also saw delayed age-related changes in a number of immune parameters, and actually in later research by Salt et al., an association between being overweight and a shorter lifespan was also identified in pet dogs of various breeds. So there are lots of risks associated with obesity, and it's proven to decrease quality and quantity of life. When we look at overweight dogs, they are 2.3 times more likely to develop arthritis. And when we look at overweight cats, they are 4 times more likely to develop diabetes. So the domestication of dogs and cats has dramatically changed the environmental and social behaviours of these animals. Pets no longer hunt, compete for food or resources, or live in those harsh environmental conditions. Currently, most pets live indoors and are individually housed and have plenty of food available. In addition, most of these pets are spayed or neutered, which we know has an impact on their metabolism. And as a consequence of these social and environmental changes, the average pet owner has a lower energy requirement compared to their ancestors. So when we look at the key risk factors, we've got breed. So certain breeds of dog appear to be at greater risk of being overweight, including the widely known dogs like Labrador retrievers. And various studies have identified other potential obesity-prone breeds, such as Cavalier, King Charles Spaniels and Beagles. Age. Peak prevalence of being overweight or obese in cats and dogs during the middle years of their life, so between 6 and 19 for dogs and between 5 and 11 for cats. And during their growing years, when they are more active and still developing, dogs and cats are less likely, but it's not impossible for them to be overweight. In adult pets, weight gain is more common because they consume more calories than they're burning, and in senior dogs, weight gain can be due to a decreased activity level alongside a decrease in their metabolic rate. Cats over the age of 12, on the other hand, are more prone to marked weight loss. Therefore, understanding how to identify healthy weights in pets at each life stage is key to maintaining their health and increasing their longevity. Sex and neutering. So it tends to be more common in females than males, but the opposite appears to be true in cats, with males, especially male neutered cats, being more prone. However, in both dogs and cats, sex is less of a determining factor than neutering status. In both dogs and cats, neutering results in altered sex hormones, which in turn leads to both metabolic and behavioural changes. Two key behavioural changes that lead to this weight gain is increased food-seeking behaviour and decreased physical activity. Metabolic rate decreases significantly in neutered cats by around 30%, and all of these changes increase the risk of dogs and cats becoming overweight. The health and behavioural benefit of neutering is generally considered to more than offset the increased risk of obesity. Excessive food intake. So in a survey of 5,000 owners, over a quarter of pet owners overfed their pets just to keep them happy, with 54% giving their cats and dogs food when they beg for it, and 50% rarely or never carefully measuring out their food. The use of feeding cups or scoops to measure the food has found to be inaccurate, with accuracy ranging from 18% underestimation to 80% overestimation in correct portion size. Now, in the same survey of pet owners, half of cat and dog owners admit to feeding their pets all they can eat at each serving. 56% recognise that they gave their pets treats to get more affection. And we know owners control food intake, and educating the owners and raising that awareness about feeding amounts, quantities, and the best methods is crucial. So then we look at food type. So the type of food, either wet or dry in itself, does not influence weight gain. Weight gain is influenced by the amount of calories that pet is consuming against their individual energy requirements. It's worth noting that dry foods have a higher energy density than wet, and it has been suggested that owners may be more prone to overfeeding dry food, as the correct portion size may look very small. Environment and activity levels. So many studies have cited that inactivity and restricted or no outdoor access is a risk factor for obesity, especially in those pets that live in apartments or flats. Cats that live with dogs or one or two other cats are also predisposed to becoming obese. Physical activity is important in preventing weight gain and maintaining weight loss. Owner behaviours. So companion animals are increasingly viewed as family members, and it has been reported that owners of obese pets tend to humanise their pets, which was shown by owners speaking to their pet more. Owners are more likely to allow their pets to sleep with them and spending more time watching their pets eat. A new study confirms that when considering the risk factors attributing to obesity, one of the main obstacles faced by owners is helping their pets to have a healthier life is their own inability to identify the ideal weight or body condition for their pet and the associated risks. 33% of the owners identified their dog as being an ideal body condition when actually their dog was overweight or obese. So that was the study that I mentioned earlier involving 3,339 dogs. And only half of those dogs, so 51% of them, or the owners, sorry, were able to correctly identify an ideal weight and body condition. So we know that there are risks of nutrient deficiencies if we just simply reduce the amount of their normal food. So what we want to have is we want to have a diet that is low in fat to reduce the overall calories, and we want to have high protein to maintain that lean muscle mass. And that also stimulates the energy metabolism, because if they're losing weight too rapidly or with insufficient protein in the diet, they will then lose muscle mass, and this decreases their resting energy requirement, and that can then make weight loss further and more difficult. So what are our objectives of dietary management when we look at obesity management diets? So ultimately what we're looking to do is we're looking to encourage fat loss. So we want to have fewer calories and less of those calories coming from fat. We want to have a higher protein level to maintain muscle mass, and we want to maintain satiety. So satiety is that feeling of fullness, and we do that with a blend of complex carbs and fibres and high protein. We want to also reduce oxidative stress. We do this through the addition of antioxidants that would mop up free radicals that would otherwise be causing damage to the cells. And we want to have urinary security. As we know for our feline friends, obesity puts them at greater risk of having urinary issues. What we are looking to achieve is slow and steady weight loss. So the theory is that dogs can lose between 1 and 2% per week, and cats can lose between 0.5 and 1% per week. I would always be on the conservative side when you are talking to your clients. So I would say that a cat could lose 0.5% per week and a dog could lose 1% per week. And actually this enables the pet or owner to be potentially really happy if they overachieve on that 0.5% for a cat or 1% for a dog, rather than feeling deflated if they don't achieve the higher figure that I stated earlier. And this is really helpful from an owner compliance point of view, because they then feel like the animal is overachieving versus the original target that you've been set. So why can't we just cut down the amount of food we're feeding? Well, there are many reasons that we can't just cut down the food that we're feeding. Ultimately, if we cut down the food, it's not got an increase in protein, so that may impact muscle mass. It's not increased in your micronutrients, so you are risking deficiencies. It's unlikely to maintain satiety, and this may lead to negative begging behaviours, and that will then consequently lead to poor owner compliance if they see the pet is struggling with that smaller quantity. But also, how much less would you need to feed? And this is where it gets into kind of theoretical values, and you don't know what impact you're having there from a kind of micronutrient point of view and the deficiencies that you may then get. So now we will look at the Purina obesity management diet and how it is working to support weight loss and weight maintenance. And I will take you through all of the details of how this product's working over the coming slides. So when you look at obesity, we want to look at body condition score. So this is the diet that you would be reaching for an animal that is a body condition score of 7 and above. We want to be feeding to their current weight and ideally checking their weight every 2 weeks and slowly reducing the food as they are losing the weight that they need to. The most important thing to take away from this session is for our obesity management diet, you are feeding to their current weight, not an expected weight. That's particularly helpful in helping those owners to do that transition. So I'm going to be a bit crude with my example, but if I've got a 50-kilo Labrador that walks into clinic, and I say to that owner, okay, well, Labradors as a breed are normally between about 25 and 32 kilos, so let's aim for him to be 30 kilos. When they're standing there with a 50-kilo dog in front of them, saying that they should be 30 kilos seems like a really big jump. But if you say to that owner, okay, he's 50 kilos, we're going to follow the feeding guide for 50 kilos. And then when he comes back and he's lost a little bit of weight, okay, he's now 49 kilos. Let's adjust the feeding guide for 49 kilos. It then feels like the owner is feeding the dog in front of them. So it doesn't feel like it's a dramatic cut in their feeding quantities. And that is really crucial in helping that owner compliance piece. It also allows you to look at body condition score being a most accurate in relation to what is the ideal weight for that animal. So how is the diet working? So we're using high protein to support lean body mass. We are using low fat because we know that's the highest energy producing nutrient. And we want to have glucose control for our diabetic dog. So that's that nice, slow and steady release of energy throughout the day. So what are the additional benefits that we have within our obesity management diet for dogs? So I've already mentioned the high protein, but we also have additional fibre, which support that satiety, so that feeling of fullness. It's got a low glycemic index, which is giving that steady release of energy throughout the day. And we've got studies that have proven the efficacy of this product. So here is the composition and typical analysis of this product. This is also available through our Vet Centre website and on our back of packs and within our veterinary product guide. So now we're going to take a little bit more of an in-depth look at those key benefits of the obesity management diet, which are high protein, low calorie and glucose control for our dogs. So first of all, let's look at high protein. So we use high protein to promote fat loss while maintaining muscle mass. That also stimulates the resting metabolism, and that then encourages gradual weight loss and reduces the risk of rebound weight gain. So lower calories from fat. So we have a study that has shown that if you use a higher protein, lower fat, that encourages the loss of fat during weight loss but maintains muscle mass. We then want to look at glucose control. So this is looking at trying to have that slow and steady release of energy throughout the day. And we do that with a blend of complex carbohydrates, fibre and the higher protein level. And the analogy I always use is if you think about for breakfast, you have a packet of jelly tots. You might really enjoy them, but you're going to have those simple sugars from the jelly tots are going to get burnt off very quickly, and you're going to have your high spike from that sugar release, and then you're going to come crashing back down to earth and you're going to be looking for what's next. But if I have some eggs and bacon for breakfast, that's going to give me a nice slow and steady release of energy throughout the morning and keep me satisfied until it's lunchtime. So now we move on to the feline range. And again, just like for our canine range, we will go on and talk a bit more detail about how the feline product is working to support our feline friends with their weight management. So again, just like the dogs, this is the diet you would use for those that are body condition score of 7 or above. You would again feed to their current weight and ideally check in their weight every 2 weeks. We know that sometimes this can be a challenge for owners because cats can get stressed coming into the practice, but it may be that they could weigh them on the scales at home. Or something like that, so that they can still check their weight regularly, and then you look at kind of every other weigh in is back in clinic. Um, Again, just like our dog product, we feed to current weight on this product, which helps from an owner compliance point of view. But we also have weight loss and weight maintenance feeding guidelines, just like we do on our canine product as well. So again, this product is working using high protein to support lean body mass, low fat as the highest energy producing nutrient. And for this diet, we have urinary support because we know obesity is a really big risk factor for cats developing urinary issues. So what are the additional benefits that we have within this product? So our obesity management has our STOX claim, and what that means is that it's going to help to minimize the development of both struvite and oxalate. It also helps to support satiety, so that feeling of fullness, and that's with the combination of the high protein and the fiber. And it's got a natural source of glucosaminoglycans, or GAGs, and omega-3 fatty acids that are going to be supporting these cats as well. So again, just like our dog, here is our ingredients and our typical analysis. If you want to look at this in any more detail, you can either go onto our vet centre website and look at the products on there, or within our PACS or veterinary product guide, we also have this information available. Okay, so now let's look at the key benefits of the feline obesity management diet in a bit more depth. So just like dogs, we want to think about high protein. So that's promoting that fat loss while maintaining that muscle mass. That then encourages the stimulation of the resting metabolism. And that also encourages gradual weight loss and reduces the risk of rebound weight gain. So we want to have lower calories coming from fat. And we have a study that has shown that higher protein, lower fat encourages the loss of fat during weight loss. And then urinary security. So as I've mentioned earlier, we know that being overweight is a significant risk factor for developing urinary issues. And this diet promotes a urinary composition to reduce the risk of stone formation. So when we think about supporting clinics with weight management, what are we going to be looking to do? So normally we're going to be looking to modify their diet, increase their exercise, and modify the behaviour of both the owner and the pet. But we know that there can be some challenges with this along the way. And first and foremost, and I think this is probably the most important when we think about management of those owners particularly, ask for permission to have the conversation, because they may not be ready for the change and they may not be open for that conversation. So making sure that they're in the right place to be able to have it. If they're not in that place, make a note on their file, try to talk to owner about the dog's weight. They didn't want to discuss it today. Please pick up at next appointment. And so that way, each member of the team that sees that animal can then try and have that conversation, because sometimes that process of change can be quite hard. The first time that owner hears there might be a concern about weight, that might be really new news to them, especially if we think back to owners' perception of body condition scoring and their assessment of being overweight or obese. They may not see that there's an issue yet. They may need several people or several occasions being told that there may be a concern there to then consider doing something different. So we want to think about getting a good and full diet history. So we have our editable nutritional assessment form, which can be shared with you via your veterinary nutrition partner, or if you log on to our vet centre website, you can download it directly from our downloadable resources. Once you have this information, it's really helpful to go through with the owner kind of what's important and what are the areas that they can flex on, and what are the areas that are kind of what I would say the non-negotiables. So if you've got an owner that says, oh, he has to have his dental treat each day, trying to then take that away may be quite challenging, and that could risk non-compliance. So the owner's still giving the dental treat, but just not telling you. So it may be that you incorporate the dental treat into the plan that you create for that animal, so that that owner is still getting the part of the diet they felt was non-negotiable, but you're getting movement in relation to them going onto the obesity diet. Okay, so we know that from an owner's perspective, they will often overestimate the impact of exercise and underestimate the amount of food that is being fed. And we've got new research that has found that owners with a healthy weight dogs were more likely to have social support from friends for exercising. So we know that things like COVID had an impact, but it's worth considering local dog walking groups, because not only will they improve the healthy weight of our pets, but they bring the communities together and also have an impact on people's well-being. Encouraging owners to walk with friends or consider a buddy up scheme through vets for owners who may struggle to find anyone to walk with. Increasing numbers of pet trackers can be used to see how much exercise a dog or cat is doing. And if that's not an option, get the owners to use their own smartphones or use apps like My Walk to see what they are doing. So the owners will often say, oh, we walk for miles, but the reality is it's a lot less. We know that play also burns calories with the motto of give attention and not food. And cats particularly, it's important to have short periods of intense play with toys that help them burn calories, but also express their natural hunting behaviours. Things like hydrotherapy could be considered and may help to maintain a healthy weight as part of their normal exercise programs. It's not just for overweight or rehabilitation cases. Free outdoor access can also play a part in obesity prevention. So for cat owners, is maybe there's something they're not keen to do for many reasons, or they're simply not able, maybe they live in a flat. But options to consider is if the owner has a garden, could they think about an outdoor secure pen if the free access isn't allowed, but ensure that they are high enough to have a level up for cats to jump on. And it's not completely unachievable and would potentially train lead train a cat, especially if they're identified from the owner that they won't have outdoor access. If you train them from an early age, this can be an excellent option for exercise. We know that our elderly patients can find exercising their dogs quite difficult, especially if they've got medical concerns themselves. But there are charities such as the Cinnamon Trust who specifically help the elderly and those terminally ill people to walk their pets if they aren't physically able to do so. There are also companies like Borrow My Doggy, where you can connect with other people who like dogs and love dogs and would like to look after them. And it's really about trying to help give those people the opportunity and to help you with your animals as well. So the next area we would look at is how do we modify the behaviour? And when we talk about modify the behaviour, we're often talking about both the animal and the owner. Because for most dogs, they're not able to open a can of food themselves or open the bag and help themselves to it. So we know that for many people, unfortunately, they don't monitor or measure the amount of food they're using. And often if they're asked, they might say, oh, I use a cupful, a scoop, a handful. But those are really imprecise. And actually the most accurate way we want to do it is using digital scales. So a standard kitchen scales that everyone has in their kitchen, or there are some fancy weighing scales that have got a weight in them. And again, it's around that sort of portion control and make sure that it's consistent, because that consistency will pay a massive amount. Now, we also know that from a study that food bowl size may have an effect on the amount of food fed. So smaller bowls might help prevent owners from overfeeding. So having demo bowls in kitchen to ask in the clinic to ask what size they're using might aid that conversation and what size is appropriate for the pet. Because for most owners, if they're free pouring, they tend to fill up the bottom of the bowl. I tend to think about if ever I've gone on a diet and I look at my cereal and go, oh, okay, it says a 30-gram portion. I then go to weigh out that 30-gram portion rather than free pouring it like I would normally. and it barely covers the bottom of the bowl. And I think, oh, that might explain why I've put on a bit of weight. It's exactly the same principle. If the owners have those bowls that are very big and they're feeling like they need to fill the bottom of the bowl or feed it part way up, that can also be something that it causes an issue. But look at things like, are there options to abandon the bowl? So looking at these sort of puzzle feeders or slow feeders can be really useful. Looking at, for cats, is there ways that you can build in kind of ability to hunt for their food? So it's in different parts of the house, it's sprinkled over the grass in the garden, whatever that might look like, just to slow down their eating, but also get them expending some energy whilst they're eating as well. That will also give them a bit more mental and environmental stimulation as well. And again, these don't need to be expensive. So you may be able to see on the screen, there is an example of toilet rolls that have been put in a box, and you just pop the kibbles into the toilet rolls, and they will fish the kibbles out or fish the toilet rolls out in order to get the kibbles. So it's quite a nice way to do it, and it's a really good way to strengthen that pet owner bond, because actually you can encourage that activity and keep them motivated by it. But also thinking about the other opportunities. So if you know there are triggers, so every time you go into the kitchen to make a cup of tea, the cat follows you in and starts circling your ankles looking for something. It's thinking about how you could spread their food out over the day to ensure that they still get that engagement and that interaction with you, but without getting additional food on top of their daily portion. So then we look at treats. So what I think is really important is kind of being mindful of where the priorities are for the owner, because going cold turkey on treats can be really tough for both the owner and for the animal. And so what's really important is to agree a realistic treat allowance. We ideally need to stay below that 10% of food intake per day, and using low calorie treats where we can. So we could look at things like courgettes, broccoli, carrots, green beans, or even things like fortiflora. Either feeding it out the hand, or better still, you could look at something like the fortiflora. You wet the inside of a Kong and you pour the sachet in, shake it about a little bit, covering obviously both ends so it stays in there, and then give it to the dogs to clean out. So they may spend an hour or so trying to clean the fortiflora out of that, but it's about 4 calories a pouch. So actually, from a weight gain perspective, it's very, very low. That will also help improve their intestinal health and improve their immune system as well. Have a daily treat jar. If you've got multiple people in the house, have a treat jar so that everybody knows if the treat jar's empty, the animals had their daily allocation of treats and they're not to have anything else. You could look at trying using some of the obesity management as part of their daily treat portion. Because then the fact that they're getting it by hand rather than in their bowl will still make them feel like it's a treating occasion. So what makes a successful weight management clinic? So what we want to do is we want to ensure there are regular checkups with you, and the feeding guideline is exactly that. It's a guideline. So you have those regular weight checks to make sure they're feeding the correct amount for the weight loss that they're aiming for. Remember, we're aiming for 1 to 2% loss per week for a dog and 0.5 to 1% loss per week for a cat. And with the owners, we would be talking to them about the lower figures within that as well. And when they come in with their food diary, focus on the good days rather than where they've gone wrong. So also think about other things that are going to help them keep on track along the weight loss journey. So taking photographs of the animal. So think about side on, from above, those different aspects so that they can see what difference as the weight comes off, they can see that difference. It's from where they started, because when you've got an owner that's with that animal each and every single day, they may not be able to see those changes. So comparing to a photo of when they first came into the clinic and how they look a few weeks or months down the line can be a real positive for them. Don't be afraid to discuss the health implications of being overweight. So sometimes owners may need a small amount of kind of emotional blackmail to focus on the fact that actually them being overweight is potentially impacting their health and their longevity. Ideally, maintain the same nurse for each client so that you are helping to build that rapport and sort of a robust relationship with them, and maintaining that open dialogue so that they feel like they trust you and they can talk to you about the oops moments, but they can also be guided and supported along that journey. But that means that they can kind of follow up with that specific person and they're getting that ongoing support. Make sure there is a two-way communication so that client knows in between weigh-ins what is the process to get in touch and ask any questions or talk about concerns they have. And then look at where there are opportunities to celebrate the successes and the milestones. So it may be looking at things like, we know that there are significant health benefits from losing 6% of your body weight. So potentially looking at setting that as a milestone. Could you have kind of ways of celebrating? So if you do a newsletter, could you write something in the newsletter about their success, or on your social media pages? Could you do certificates or slimmers of the month? Could you have a board in reception highlighting it? Could there be a kind of discount off the food, or a trophy or something else that you can do to promote how well they're doing with that journey? So again, remember, the important part here for a successful weight management clinic is any loss is a good loss and it's moving us in the right direction. We know that we potentially got the sort of up to 1% for a cat and up to 2% for a dog, but we need to really focus the owner on any weight loss, and any movement of the scales in the right direction is what we're looking for. So how can Purina help? So I'm not going to go through this in lots of detail, but we do have lots of different tools to support you and your clients through that weight loss journey. If you want to know more information about the products that we've got to support you in clinic, please reach out to your VMP, so that's your veterinary nutrition partner, or alternatively, at the end of this presentation, we'll give you the email address for our technical helpline and you can reach out to us and we can direct you to your veterinary nutrition partner. So now we look at trouble solving. It is critical to control the feeding of extra foods like table scraps or treats, and owners don't necessarily appreciate the significant calorie contribution that these foods can make on total dietary intake. Owners will never stop treating and may not be completely honest, so careful questioning is key. Owners may also not see some additional foods as treats, such as training aids, especially in puppies, those that are used for medications or to get them to eat their diet. Asking if they add anything extra to their meals is a really good question. You will hear all sorts: gravy, cheese, chicken, all of which are additional calories. Similarly to a child being asked multiple times the question of, and you wait for a response. Be comfortable with that silence. It's really important because the owners will want to fill it and they will often give you more information and share more content with you. We know that if treats are being used, they shouldn't make up more than 10% of the daily energy requirements, and then the main meal should be reduced accordingly to support the owners to do that, so that the overall daily calorie allowance is not being exceeded. So we've achieved our target weight. Now what do we do? So ideally, we want to stay on the obesity management, but we want to move to the weight management feeding guidelines, so the weight maintenance. The first couple of months on this feeding guideline, we will continue to weigh monthly, then we will move to quarterly, and then we will move to twice a year. If you have an owner that doesn't want to stay on the obesity management diet long term, ideally, we would want them to move then onto a light diet and continue more regular weigh-ins. So for example, monthly weigh-ins regularly, so that's kind of more regular check-ins to make sure that the change to a life stage diet isn't having a detrimental effect. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this session. If you have any questions, please reach out to your veterinary nutrition partner or email us on vettechline@purina.nestle.com. Thank you so much for your time and have a great afternoon.